Welcome to SIE 432, 532. Let's dive right in. In this video, I'm going to review some frequently asked questions related to the course and the syllabus, and hopefully we'll get everybody started off on the right foot. The FAQs are listed here. I will go through each one of them in sufficient detail to get everybody informed and off on the right page for this course. Hopefully all these questions will be simple to answer, but if you have additional follow-up questions, feel free to email the TA or myself. So regarding the first question, should you be in this course? It can be answered in a few ways. First of all, if you've taken the required prerequisites, SIE 305, or an equivalent college statistics course, then you're in the right place. But also, you might be wondering whether you are comfortable enough with Microsoft Excel, the programming languages R and Python. And even if you're not comfortable with these, you're going to find enough information in the videos and I think sufficient time for you to learn what you need to be successful. So if you're willing to put in the time and you've got the required prerequisites, then I think you'll be in good shape. Now, in terms of the difficulty of this course, you have to remember that this is a compressed course, runs over a period of 5.5 weeks. That means that we're covering what's typically covered in one semester, which is 14 weeks, in about 1/3 of the time. The distribution of the grades is as follows. About 1/3 is homeworks and quizzes, about 1/3 is the final project, and about 1/3 is the final exam. Now, what I recommend is for students to spend between 15 and 20 hours per week on this course. And that is usually split between the readings, a few hours, the video lectures, and listening to some interviews, a few hours, and then doing the graded assignments and quizzes are probably the heaviest lift in terms of time. Now, towards the end of the course, there'll be an additional requirement to spend some time on the final project, and I would suggest you budget about 20 hours spread out over about a week and a half or two towards the end of the course. So again, if you have the amount of time available, then you're in the right place. If you don't have 15 to 20 hours a week for the next 5 weeks, I suggest you probably find another alternative. Now, the teaching assistant, Jake Gladding, has already sent an introduction email to you all, so you have his contact information. But we will also, in addition to responding to emails, we will schedule some occasional virtual office hours where we can meet in this interactive environment called Zoom. We'll be live and be able to interact back and forth, answer any questions about the quizzes, the homework, or the final projects. There are 3 textbooks that are part of this course, and you only need to buy one of them. I mentioned this in my introductory email. The one that you need to buy is the middle one called Relentless. There's going to be some reading assignments related to this book, so hopefully you've already purchased it or you've already ordered it online. If you haven't, please do so as soon as possible, because there will be some questions in the first homework assignment related to the Relentless book. The other 2 books, Mathletics and Automate the Boring Stuff with Python, are required, but they'll provided to you for free. There are links to access these books via some websites on the course syllabus, which I'll be covering shortly. Now, the Mathletics book was written by Wayne Winston, who is a longtime professor at Indiana University, and I think now he is retired and teaching some courses at the University of Houston. But when Professor Winston was teaching at Indiana, he had a student by the name of Mark Cuban. And that name might sound familiar because he was the founder of Dell Computers and then made a lot of money in that and other businesses, subsequently purchased the Dallas Mavericks. And you'll also see Mark Cuban's influence in the show The Shark Tank. So Mark Cuban was one of Winston's students, and naturally, Winston is also an advisor to the Dallas Mavericks on analytics-related topics. The last book, Automate the Boring Stuff with Python, we'll be using this as a reference guide. Again, you don't need to purchase this book. I've provided the URL to access all of the contents from the book via a website for free. Now, another element of this course is for you to hear from experts in the field. Beyond what I have to present to you, I think it's great to broaden the aperture of other perspectives. Wayne Winston is pictured on the top left. You will hear from him and his thoughts about analytics and some questions that I got to ask him and capture that information in form of a audio interview. And there are other folks like David Tapia, the gentleman in the top middle, a scout for the New York Yankees, or other experts in the areas of basketball, baseball, and football. Brady Quinn there on the bottom right, former Notre Dame quarterback and NFL quarterback, and now a analyst on television on a lot of NFL games. So Father Costa on the top right from West Point and Seton Hall, another very well-known author in the area of sports analytics. What you'll see throughout the course is reference to interviews that I've had with each of these experts, and I'm asking you to listen to these interviews and also answer some questions either in the form of homework or in the weekly quizzes to make sure that you were able to capture the salient points from each of the experts. Now, speaking of homework, the first homework assignment is due on Sunday. In fact, all homework assignments will be due on Sunday. It will give you enough time to go through all the material during the week, and you're always welcome to turn in the homework early, but if you need the weekend to finish all that, you're given until midnight on Sunday. And typically there are multiple parts to the homework, usually 3 parts. In this example, for homework number 1, the first part relates to the first 66 pages of the Relentless book. And for you to consider what sorts of topics and applications of the book, specifically as it relates to cleaners, which is one of the subject matters of the book, and how the attributes of these particular athletes and these particular stars relate to other points, other elements in your life. Part 2 of the homework has to do with answering statistical questions and posing statistical questions, and the information that you need in order to perform this particular part of the question or part of the homework assignment is through a video where I explain what statistical questions are and how to frame them. And finally, I mentioned the expert interviews earlier. The 2 that I've got teed up for you in week number 1 are Dr. Wayne Winston, the author of the Mathletics book, and Mr. David Tapia, the scout for the New York Yankees. In terms of grading criteria, there are 2 different criteria depending on whether you are enrolled in the undergraduate section or the graduate section of the course. You can see that the top table applies to the undergraduate section. You've got homeworks, quizzes, exams, and a final project. The graduate section is very similar in terms of the number of assignments, except the final project is expected to be a little longer and contain some additional information in order to demonstrate your mastery of some of the topics in the course. I'll be providing a lot more information and specific grading criteria for that final project as we get closer, but at least I wanted to put this in front of you now and give you an opportunity to appreciate where you should spend your time in terms of where the weights are for the grades of the course. Finally, you might have already heard a lot of references to baseball, maybe the movie Moneyball, and all the analytics that comes from it. And I wanted to point out that it's okay if you're not a massive baseball fan, if you're not a extremely knowledgeable about baseball analytics, because you're going to learn what you need to learn in this course to be successful. So it's okay if your final project has nothing to do with baseball, because we are going to cover topics in football, basketball, and other sports. So I didn't want to give off the impression that just because I talk a lot about baseball, that also has to be your interest. Now, there's a reason why we utilize baseball as a starting point, and that is that baseball is very easy to quantify, because the way the sport works is that after every play, there's a clear beginning and end. And so it makes it very easy to assign credit or to quantify the outcome of each play. And as a result, baseball has a decades head start in terms of quantifying and building an analytics culture. And so that gives us a lot of really good information in terms of how sport can be quantified, and then we can look at how those ideas apply to other sports, building upon the baseball knowledge. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about is the course website in the D2L Learning Management System. As many of you know, D2L stands for Desire to Learn. And this is the main landing spot for everything related to this course in terms of assignments, lectures, and projects. So when you click on this course, you'll see that it's laid out in a similar way of a lot of other courses that you may have used at the University of Arizona, with the main menus located here across the top. In the content menu is where you'll be able to access all the materials from the course. And if you've never taken an online course, I strongly suggest that you look at some of the information here in the Getting Started section of the course. If you've already taken an online course, I would suggest to go directly to the syllabus and the course schedule. Now, you have already received the syllabus from me by email, but this is the same document that you've seen before. It outlines all of the course requirements in terms of the books. It has our contact information and the learning outcomes of the course. I wanted to point out again, the 3 books are listed here. You only need to purchase the 3rd book, which is Relentless. You do not need to purchase the other 2 because they are available for free for you to download from these websites. As we get into the final projects, there are some optional readings if you want to learn more about analyzing baseball data with R. And then I made reference to the movie Moneyball. That movie is based on this book by Michael Lewis. And then we're going to be looking at journal articles from the Journal of Sports Analytics, which are also provided here and available to you for free through the University of Arizona library. When we get into the software, we will provide you some instructions on how to download the specific elements from Microsoft Excel that are needed to do the assignments. That is specifically the data analysis tool pack. That is typically available for you already in the installation, but you have to enable it. You have to turn it on because it's typically not turned on by default. Then we will show you how to download R and RStudio, which are the environments in which we will write and analyze R code. And finally, the development environment for Python as well. We're going to be looking at that in weeks 4 and 5 of the course. Now, in terms of your final project, again, I will be giving you very specific grading criteria and rubrics for that. But I want to point out again that the meat of your grade in this course is the final project. It is worth 40%. And so when you think about that, almost half of your grade is the final project. So you have to put in quite a bit of hours in order to demonstrate that you've mastered some of the material in the course and you're able to apply it to a question related to sports analytics that you're interested in. So that does it for the syllabus. The other file I want to point out in this same section is the course schedule. Now what I've done here is outlined the entire contents of the course on one page. So you'll see week by week what we will be covering and when the deadlines are for those elements. You'll see for the homeworks, these are all due on Sundays to give you enough time to do the work during the week and then complete the homework assignments or quizzes during the weekend. Now note that the last week of class is a short week. Week number 5 actually ends on Wednesday, July 3rd. So don't go into it thinking that you have a 6th week available to you. You have to submit your final project on July 3rd because that is officially the last day of this course. So make sure that you write this down, put it on your calendar, make sure that all these dates are noted and you can anticipate any work commitments or travel, vacation. This is again a very compressed course. We're squeezing in a lot of hours that would typically take 14 or 15 weeks to do over a regular semester. We're squeezing all of that into 5.5 weeks. The next aspect of the D2L website I want to point you to is where you'll be spending most of your time, which is the learning modules. In the learning modules, you'll see that they're distributed week by week. And in week 1, which is where you'll be starting, you'll see that there's a collection of videos, there's a collection of documents like the course schedule that I just went through, and probably the best place to start is the overview document for each week. And let me just give you a glimpse into the overview document for week 1. Everything you need to know in terms of the assignments, the course deadlines, the readings, they were all laid out here in the week 1 overview. You'll see a week 2 overview and a week 3 overview and so on. So I want to just remind you that that is a really good place to start because it consolidates all the information that you need to know for what needs to be accomplished that week and then the associated deadlines for when those things need to be submitted. Okay, so we hope that that removes any ambiguity, removes any questions that you might have to get you started and be as productive as you can over the next 5.5 weeks. Now, one of the first things that I want you to do is fill out this survey where you have the opportunity to introduce yourself in terms of what your interests are, what you want to get out of the course, your level of familiarity or comfort with the different programming tools that we have, and also just answer some fun questions about sports, like who your favorite team is and who you think the greatest athlete is of all time. So please fill this out as soon as you can. Again, in the D2L site, there is a deadline for this. and also you have to get right on this immediately in terms of looking at when assignments are due. Even though homework number 1 is due on Sunday, there are also some things that you need to do ahead of that time to be able to accomplish everything you need for that homework. So I wish you the best of luck with the next 5.5 weeks. I look forward to interacting with you virtually, and at any time, if the TA or I can answer any questions, please feel free to reach out by email, or please join the virtual office hours that we will be scheduling in the near future. Thanks a lot.